So picture this. It's 2 in the morning.
Right.
You're sound asleep in your bed. And outside, the wind suddenly kicks up.
Oh, but yeah, always at night.
Always. And it's not just a breeze. It's a real sustained howl that actually rattles the window panes.
The kind that wakes you up instantly.
Exactly. And then cutting through the ambient noise of that wind, you hear it.
That sound.
That ominous, deep, groaning creak. I mean, it sounds almost like the hull of an old wooden ship under immense pressure.
That's a perfect way to describe it, yeah.
Right. So you lie there in the dark, your eyes are just wide open, and you're listening to that massive 60-foot tree right outside your bedroom window.
Just waiting.
Yeah, swaying, creaking, leaning. And suddenly, what usually feels like this majestic piece of nature framing your home, it just feels like an absolute terror.
Because in that specific moment, the illusion of permanence completely shatters.
Yes.
You suddenly realize there are thousands of pounds of timber suspended directly over where you sleep, and you have absolutely zero control over what happens next.
None at all.
The situation is entirely dictated by gravity, the velocity of the wind, and, the unseen structural integrity of that wood.
That primal anxiety, just looking up at a towering canopy and wondering if it's going to crush your roof.
Yeah.
That is our focus for today's deep dive.
It's a great topic.
We're turning our attention to something that is literally looming over our heads, yet we rarely give it a second thought until the wind starts howling.
Right. It's just background scenery until it's a threat.
Exactly. So we're pulling from some incredible source material today. A series of expert insights and articles published in the spring of 2026 by an arboriculture specialist named John Constantine.
Yeah, out of Tree Service Perfection, West Covina.
Right. He operates out in the trenches of Southern California, specifically the West Covina area and the San Gabriel Valley.
His field notes and case studies offer this really fascinating ground-level perspective. I mean, we tend to view trees as static fixtures on a property, like a lamppost or a statue.
Right, just part of the architecture.
But they're massive, dynamic organisms constantly interaction with their environment. If you don't understand the physics and biology of that interaction, you are essentially flying blind on your own property.
And the stakes are wildly high. Over the course of this deep dive, we're going to tear apart the mechanics of how local weather systems secretly destroy massive trees from the inside out.
The invisible damage.
Yeah. We'll explore the terrifying physics of why DIY tree care is basically a lethal gamble. We're going to untangle the bureaucratic maze of municipal tree laws, which is wild, by the way.
Oh, the fines are staggering.
We'll get into that. And finally, we'll look at the financial side, how a properly curated canopy is actually a massive asset to your home's value.
A huge ROI if done right.
Exactly. So whether you live nestled in a lush valley out near a wilderness park, or you just have that one single towering oak shading your driveway, this is going to fundamentally change how you look at the greenery around your home.
The best place to start is with those invisible forces acting on the trees every single day.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Because before we can even discuss the logistics of taking a tree down, we have to understand the mechanisms that turn a healthy organism into a towering liability.
Right.
And in the source material, that all begins with the extreme stress test of the local climate.
The climate crucible.
Exactly. The Mediterranean climate of Southern California, specifically places like West Covina, is a brutal crucible for vegetation.
Because it isn't just a matter of it being generally hot or generally rainy, right? We're talking about severe whiplash-inducing extremes.
Yes, the extremes are the killer. Let's trace this cycle of destruction, starting with the summer.
Okay.
You get these searing, dry heat waves where the sun just beats down relentlessly week after week.
And what's happening underground during that?
Well, from a botanical perspective, the soil essentially bakes into concrete.
Wow.
When that happens, the root systems are completely deprived of moisture. But the tree still has a canopy of leaves that are transpiring.
Transparent, so they're like sweating, losing water to the hot air.
Exactly. To survive, the tree has to pull water up from the roots, creating immense tension in the water columns inside its trunk.
Like sucking incredibly hard on a straw.
Yes. And when the soil is completely dry, that tension becomes too great. The water columns can literally snap.
Wait, they actually snap?
It's a process called cavitation. It creates tiny air bubbles inside the tree's vascular system, permanently damaging its ability to transport water.
Oh, wow. So the tree is essentially suffocating on a cellular level.
Precisely. It is locked in this state of profound dehydration.
It's like a classic car that looks beautiful and shiny on the outside, but underneath it's got a completely rusted out engine.
That's a really good analogy. And what's fascinating here is that when a tree is expending all its energy just trying to stay hydrated, its natural defense mechanisms just plummet.
Because it's exhausted.
Right. It can no longer produce this sticky sap or the complex chemical responses needed to pitch out boring insects or fight off fungal spores.
So it's structurally weakened, chemically defenseless, and baking in the sun.
Yes. And then the season flips.
Right. The winter rains. You would assume the tree would be thrilled to finally get some precipitation.
You would think so. But instead of a gentle watering, the region gets these intense torrential winter rains.
The atmospheric rivers.
Exactly. So the ground goes from being baked concrete to completely saturated mud in a matter of days.
And this is bad for the roots.
This is where the soil mechanics completely fail the tree. You have a massive structure. I mean, a mature oak or eucalyptus can easily weigh 10 tons.
10 tons, that is massive.
And it's anchored into the ground. But soil relies on friction and cohesion to hold roots in place.
Okay.
When you dump massive amounts of water into baked soil, the water fills all the pore spaces. It acts as a lubricant.
Oh no. So it gets slippery.
The soil undergoes a localized form of liquefaction, essentially turning to soup.
Wow.
The mechanical grip on the root system is catastrophically compromised.
So the tree survives the drought only to have its foundation completely dissolved by the rain.
Exactly. And then comes the absolute finisher.
The Santa Ana winds.
The timing is what makes it so lethal.
Right, because these aren't just strong breezes. I mean, these are intense, dry, hurricane-force winds.
Sweeping down from the high desert.
Yeah, funneling through the mountain passes and accelerating as they hit the valleys. So if we look at the compounding variables here,
That's a perfect storm.
you have a tree that was starved of water all summer, so the wood fibers in the canopy are brittle, they're inelastic.
Right.
The root system is currently sitting in loose, saturated mud from the recent torrential rains.
Yeah.
And then, out of nowhere, these winds slam into the canopy with 50, 60, sometimes 80-mile-per-hour gusts.
The aerodynamics of a tree canopy are fascinating. The leaves and branches act like a massive sail catching that wind.
Like a literal sailboat sail.
Exactly. The force applied to the top of the tree creates massive leverage at the base.
Oh, physics.
Right. Because the wood is brittle from the drought, it can't bend and absorb the kinetic energy. And because the soil is saturated from the rain, the roots can't hold the anchor.
So the trunk just experiences intense shear stress.
And the horizontal force simply overwhelms the vertical anchor. The trunk snaps or the whole thing uproots.
The source notes from Constantine are incredibly blunt about the aftermath. He says those winds turn heavy, brittle branches into 10,000-pound unguided missiles.
That is exactly what they become.
I was trying to wrap my head around this invisible decay, and I kept thinking about how deceptive the exterior can be.
It's extremely deceptive.
You look at a big palm tree or an old pine in your yard, and it might look green and leafy. But inside, fungal infections, which thrive in these wild swings between dry heat and wet soil, are just silently rotting it away.
Ejecting the core.
Yeah, it is terrifying because
Yeah.
you, as the homeowner, are just looking at the green leaves thinking everything is completely fine.
That deception is a critical concept in arboriculture. A tree can push out a flush of green leaves even while its heartwood is dying.
The heartwood is the center.
Right, the dense central column of dead wood that actually provides the structural backbone of the tree. It can be turning to absolute mush.
But the leaves are still green?
The outer rings of the tree, the sapwood, might still be transporting just enough water to keep the leaves green. It completely masks the fact that the structural support is gone.
That is insane.
You don't realize the core is hollow until the wind hits it and the trunk just folds in half.
Which brings us to a massive question. If the climate is hiding all this damage deep inside the trunk or below the soil, how are we supposed to read the signs?
You have to know what to look for.
Right. I want to know what I should be looking for when I walk out my front door tomorrow morning.
You have to shift your perspective. You can't just look at the foliage anymore.
Okay.
You have to perform a visual inspection of the structural anatomy of the tree and the hardscape around it. The source material outlines several definitive biological indicators that a tree is failing.
Let's pull those out. The first one mentioned in the notes is deep cracks in the bark.
Mm-hmm.
And to be clear, we aren't talking about the natural rough texture of oak bark, right?
No, not
Yeah.
the natural texture. We are talking about actual structural fissures. You are looking for vertical seams where the wood beneath the bark is visibly splitting or separating.
From the twisting in the wind.
Exactly. When a tree is subjected to torsion twisting forces or shear stress, the internal wood fibers can tear.
And Does the tree try to fix that?
It does. It will often try to heal over these internal fractures by producing rapid, bulky growth along the crack. We call them ram's horns because of how the bark curls inward.
I've seen that. It really does look like a horn.
Yeah, but if you see an open, weeping crack, it means the structural integrity of that section has completely failed.
So the wood is quite literally pulling itself apart under its own weight.
Exactly.
That is unsettling to visualize. The next warning sign is one that totally surprised me, actually.
The mushrooms.
Yes. Fungi sprouting near the base of the trunk.
Yeah.
I always just assumed mushrooms in the yard were a sign of healthy, moist soil. Like a fairy ring or something.
Context is everything here.
But
Mushrooms growing in the mulch are usually fine, They're just breaking down the wood chips. But if you see mushrooms growing directly out of the base of the tree trunk, or tracing the path of the large structural roots above the ground,
then what?
the damage is already done.
Because the mushrooms are just the tip of the iceberg, right?
Exactly. The mushroom is simply the fruiting body, the reproductive organ of the fungus. The actual organism is a massive network of microscopic threads.
A mycelium.
Right. If you see fruiting bodies at the base of the tree, it means that mycelial network has already extensively colonized the root system, or the lower trunk.
So it's inside the tree eating it.
Yes. It's actively secreting enzymes that digest the structural polymers of the wood, the cellulose, and the lignin.
Wow.
By the time the fungus has enough excess energy to push out mushrooms on the outside, it has likely hollowed out a significant portion of the tree's anchor.
So if you see those little brackets or mushrooms hugging the bark, the tree's foundation is essentially turning to a sponge.
A literal sponge.
What else should we be looking for?
Out-of-season leaf drop.
Okay, like dropping leaves in the spring.
Or the summer. If you look down your street in the middle of July, and every tree is vibrant and green, but yours is rapidly shedding its leaves, that tree is in profound systemic distress.
It's panicking.
It is forming an abscission layer at the base of the leaf stems, intentionally cutting off the leaves to abort them.
Why would it do that?
To radically reduce its water loss. It's conserving whatever energy it has left to keep the vital organs alive.
A survival mechanism.
Right. But it signals that the tree is losing a major battle against drought, disease, or pests.
And then there is the tilt. The sources point out that significant new leaning is an emergency red flag.
Very important.
I know trees naturally grow at slight angles to chase the sunlight, but how much lean is too much?
The key word there is new.
New leaning.
Right. If a mature tree has always had a slight sweeping curve, it has likely developed reaction wood to compensate for that weight distribution over decades.
It built up its own muscles, basically.
Exactly. But if an upright pine suddenly develops a 10-degree lean after a winter storm, or if you see the soil actively mounding or cracking on the side opposite the lean.
Oh, like the roots are pulling up the dirt.
You have a critical root failure. The tension roots on the windward side have snapped, and gravity is now winning.
The property itself will give you clues too, won't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Like if you notice that the roots are suddenly heaving up your concrete driveway or cracking your pavement.
That isn't just an expensive masonry problem.
Right. Those roots are aggressively seeking oxygen, stability, or water, and they possess enough hydraulic pressure to shatter concrete to get it.
You also need to look up at your roof line.
Oh, the branches.
Branches aggressively rubbing against your roof shingles present a dual threat.
How so?
First, the constant friction from the wind sands away the protective bark of the tree. That creates an open wound that invites those fungal spores we just talked about.
So you're giving the tree an infection.
Simultaneously, it is physically tearing apart your roofing material, destroying the waterproofing.
And opening a convenient highway for rodents to march directly into your attic.
Exactly. Rats love tree bridges.
Okay, I want to pause here and look at this logically from the listener's perspective.
Sure.
Let's say I go out tomorrow. I inspect my giant pine tree. I see a patch of fungus at the base. I notice it's shedding needles out of season, and maybe there's a slight new tilt.
Red flags everywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
I know the tree is dying. But I also know professional tree removal is expensive.
It is an investment, yes.
So if the tree is already dead, the sap has dried up, the water weight is gone, shouldn't a dried out tree be significantly lighter?
You would think so.
And therefore, much cheaper and easier for a professional to pull down next year? I mean, why not just wait and see, save the money for now?
That is a very common and seemingly logical assumption, but it is fundamentally flawed when it comes to the physics of arboriculture.
Why?
Because while, yes, the tree loses water weight, In doing so, it loses its structural elasticity and its tensile strength.
Oh, it gets crunchy.
A dead tree becomes incredibly brittle.
So it's not about the weight at all. It's about the fragility.
Precisely. When a certified arborist dismantles a living or recently deceased tree, they physically climb it.
Right, with ropes and spurs.
They use ropes and harnesses anchored to the upper branches to systematically cut and lower pieces to the ground. The tree itself acts as the structural support for the rigging and the climber.
So if you wait a year,
The internal rot progresses. The wood becomes so brittle that it can no longer safely support the weight of a climber or the dynamic shock loading of a massive branch swinging on a rope.
the anchor points would just snap off and the arborist would fall.
Exactly, and once a tree is deemed too hazardous to climb, the price of removal skyrockets exponentially.
Because they need machines.
The tree service can no longer do it with a crew of climbers and ropes. They have to bring in a massive mobile crane.
Oh,
They have to navigate it into your driveway, potentially shut down the street with traffic control, and meticulously pluck the tree apart from above without ever putting a human being in the canopy.
so you are trading a standard removal fee for the daily rental rate of heavy industrial machinery.
Waiting is an illusion of savings that carries an exponential financial penalty.
That makes perfect sense. The structural integrity is the currency that pays for an easier removal.
Exactly.
And we haven't even touched on the environmental liability of leaving a dead tree standing, particularly in the Mediterranean climate of Southern California.
The fire hazard.
The source material is adamant about this. A dead tree isn't just a piece of bad landscaping. It is vertical kindling.
During the intense heat waves and Santa Ana wind events, the moisture content of dead wood plummets to single digits.
It's like bone dry.
Right, and certain species, like eucalyptus and pine, are naturally packed with highly volatile resins and terpenes.
Oh, like turpentine. Flammable stuff.
Exactly. When they die and dry out, they become incredibly flammable. This is why local fire departments aggressively enforce the concept of defensible space.
Defensible space, which basically means clearing out any easily ignitable material within a certain radius of the structure.
Right, so firefighters actually have a safe zone to stand and defend the house from an approaching wildfire.
If you have a dead, dried-out pine tree sitting 10 feet from your eaves, you do not have defensible space.
You have a massive ladder fuel.
A ladder fuel meaning it carries the fire up.
Right, it catches fire from stray ember, generates intense radiant heat, and carries the flames directly onto your roof.
So removing a dead tree in a fire-prone corridor isn't an aesthetic choice at all. It is a vital, life-saving mitigation strategy.
It is often the deciding factor in whether a home survives an ember shower or burns to the foundation.
So the homeowner sees the warning signs. They understand the financial and fire risks of waiting. They know the tree has to go immediately.
Right.
Unfortunately, human nature dictates that the very next instinct is to look in the garage, see an aluminum ladder and a chainsaw, and think, I can probably figure this out on a Saturday afternoon.
And that transition from recognizing a natural hazard to attempting an amateur extraction is where property damage and severe injuries occur.
Here's where it gets really interesting in the sources. They spend a significant amount of time detailing the dangers of the DIY delusion.
It is a massive problem in the industry.
And I get it, you know.
Yeah.
We live in an era where you can watch a 10-minute video on your phone and learn how to replace the alternator in your car or tile a bathroom floor.
Sure.
But applying that weekend warrior confidence to arboriculture is uniquely disastrous. I was reading the sections on the physics involved, and it reminded me of dentistry.
Dentistry, that's an interesting comparison.
Think about it. Let's say you have a terrible toothache. You look in your toolbox and realize you own a pair of pliers.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Technically, you possess the tool required to extract the tooth. But you have absolutely zero knowledge of the nervous system embedded in the jawbone, the torque required to break the periodontal ligaments, or the massive risk of infection.
Right. Just because you have pliers doesn't make you an oral surgeon.
Exactly. A chainsaw provides a very similar, very dangerous illusion of capability.
It is just a fast, motorized saw. It imparts absolutely no knowledge of the biological mechanics or the stored kinetic energy of the organism you are cutting into.
Thousands of pounds of timber.
And as Constantine elegantly states in the notes, gravity doesn't negotiate.
A guy on an extension ladder with a buzzing chainsaw is entirely out of his depth. Let's talk about the specific mechanics of why it goes wrong so quickly. You brought up load-bearing dynamics earlier.
Yes.
How does an arborist view a branch differently than a DIR?
An arborist views a tree as a complex system of tension and compression.
Tension and compression. Okay.
When a massive branch grows outward from a trunk, gravity is constantly pulling it downward.
Right.
The wood fibers on the top side of the branch are stretching, they're under tension. The wood fibers on the bottom side of the branch are being crushed together. They're under compression.
Oh, wow.
This creates a massive amount of stored kinetic energy, like a coiled spring.
So the wood is essentially a loaded trap.
Exactly. When a professional makes a cut, they are performing a highly calculated release of that stored energy.
They don't just hack at it.
No. They understand the concept of hinge wood and the neutral axis. They make a precise undercut to relieve the compression, followed by a top cut to release the tension, controlling exactly where and how the branch falls.
And what happens when the weekend warrior just fires up the saw and cuts straight down from the top?
The saw blade breaches the tension fibers, and the weight of the branch causes it to snap violently downward before the cut is finished.
Yikes.
This creates a phenomenon known in the industry as a barber chair.
A barber chair. That sounds harmless, but I'm guessing it's not.
It's lethal. The wood splits vertically down the trunk, tearing a massive slab of wood backward with explosive force. If you are standing behind it, it will strike you under the chin with enough force to be fatal.
Oh my God.
Alternatively, if a branch is pinned under another fallen branch, it becomes a spring pole.
Like a bent twig.
Exactly. The moment a DIR cuts it, the tension releases, and the branch whips upward like a medieval catapult.
Taking the saw and the operator with it.
Right into the air.
The sheer physics of the wood is terrifying enough. But the most sobering warning in the entire arboriculture brief isn't about gravity or tension.
It's about electricity.
Yes. The danger of working near high-voltage utility lines.
It cannot be overstated. If a tree canopy is within 10 feet of a high-voltage distribution line, it is a lethal working environment for anyone without specialized utility line clearance certification.
10 feet seems like a lot of space. I always assumed the danger was just being clumsy and accidentally hitting the power line with a metal pole saw or a branch.
That's what most people think, but the physics of high voltage are much more insidious than that.
How so?
You do not have to physically touch a high voltage line to be electrocuted. High voltage electricity can overcome the dielectric resistance of the air.
It can jump.
It can literally jump or arc through the air from the wire to a conductive object.
And what determines if it arcs? Like, how does that happen?
Proximity and humidity. If a DIR swings an aluminum ladder or a damp branch within that 10-foot threshold, the electrical potential can ionize the air molecules.
Creating a path.
It creates a superheated conductive channel. The current will instantly arc from the power line, travel through the metal tools, or even the moisture inside the tree sap.
Because sap is water and minerals.
Which is an excellent conductor.
Yeah.
And then it seeks the fastest path to the ground. That path is directly through the person holding the tool.
That is horrifying. The tree itself acts as a massive sap-filled wire.
And this is why true professionals utilize entirely different methods. They aren't just wearing hard hats and swinging chainsaws.
They use special gear, right?
They utilize specialized non-conductive fiberglass tools. They use advanced friction devices like porter wraps, complex pulley systems, and dynamic climbing ropes to systematically dismantle a tree piece by piece.
It's an engineering project.
They control the descent of a 500-pound chunk of wood so that it floats gently to the turf, causing zero impact to the house, the power lines, or the ground below.
It is surgical precision applied to heavy industry.
Exactly.
Okay, let's play out a hypothetical scenario. Let's imagine our listener completely ignores all these warnings.
Oh, boy.
They get out the ladder. They somehow navigate the tension wood without suffering a barber chair to the chin. They avoid the power lines. Through sheer dumb luck, they manage to drop a massive oak tree safely onto their front lawn without crushing their roof or breaking an arm.
A miracle.
Right. The sawdust settles. They're wiping the sweat off their forehead, feeling incredibly victorious. Have they won?
Physically, yes. But legally and financially, they might have just stepped into a bureaucratic minefield that could cost them more than professional removal ever would have.
This transitions us into the hidden reality of urban forestry. This staggering amount of red tape and municipal law wrapped around our yards.
What's a whole other world?
It feels like a massive contradiction. You work hard to buy a piece of property. You pay your mortgage. You pay the property taxes. You legally hold the deed to that land.
Yet
you do not have the unilateral right to alter the mature nature living on it.
it requires looking at the landscape from a municipal perspective. Local governments do not view mature trees merely as private landscaping.
What do they view them as?
They view the collective canopy as critical, shared public infrastructure.
Infrastructure, like a bridge or a sewer system.
Exactly like that. A mature urban canopy provides quantifiable, systemic benefits to the entire city.
Okay, let's connect this to the bigger picture. How does my tree help the city?
Well, large trees significantly reduce the urban heat island effect by shading asphalt and releasing moisture through evapotranspiration, which cools the ambient air temperature of the entire neighborhood.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize they cooled the air that much.
They do. And their massive root systems stabilize the soil and absorb thousands of gallons of stormwater runoff, preventing the municipal storm drains from overflowing during those torrential winter rains we discussed.
So they act as giant sponges for the city.
Plus, they filter particulate pollution out of the air. The city relies on those trees to manage the local environment.
So when you cut down a massive oak in your front yard, you aren't just changing your curb appeal, you are degrading the city's ecological infrastructure.
And the city aggressively protects that infrastructure through strict municipal codes.
The sources mention specific trees.
Yes. In the West Covina area, for example, Constantine specifically highlights the heavy protections placed on heritage species like the coast live oak and the Southern California black walnut.
Heritage trees, meaning they are native.
Indigenous, ecologically vital trees.
You can't just fire up a chainsaw because they're dropping acorns on your driveway.
No, you absolutely cannot. If you remove a protected heritage tree or even a standard street tree that exceeds a certain diameter at breast height.
Diameter at breast height, that's the measurement.
Yes, that's the standard metric used by code enforcement. If you remove it without securing the proper municipal permits, the penalties are strictly punitive.
How bad are we talking?
We're talking about fines that can run into the thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars, plus civil mandates requiring you to plant multiple mature replacement trees at your own expense.
Oh, man. Imagine successfully cutting down the tree to save, what, $500? Only to have a city inspector tape a $5,000 citation to your front door the following week.
The financial ruin would be instantaneous.
This reveals a secondary, often overlooked value of hiring a premier tree service. A reputable arborist doesn't just provide physical safety, they provide a shield against legal liability.
They navigate the red tape.
They know the municipal codes of every specific city they operate in, right?
They have to. They know how to identify the subtle biological differences between a protected coast live oak and an unprotected invasive species. They know the exact diameter thresholds that trigger a permit requirement.
They handle the bureaucracy.
They file the necessary paperwork. They arrange for the city arborist to come out and inspect the diseased tree. And they secure the official permits before a single saw is started.
So they ensure that the entire operation is completely above board.
Exactly, shielding the homeowner from crippling municipal fines.
So professional service isn't just about avoiding a trip to the emergency room. It's about avoiding a trip to the courthouse. That peace of mind is incredibly valuable.
Without a doubt.
So far, we've focused heavily on risk mitigation. We've talked about stopping bad things from happening, avoiding roof damage, avoiding fires, dodging fines, and surviving the physics of timber.
The scary stuff.
Right. But I want to pivot for the final part of our deep dive. I want to talk about value creation.
How proper arboriculture is actually a massive financial asset rather than just a distress tax.
Exactly. When you spend money on a certified arborist, you are investing in the resale value of your property.
It's an investment, not an expense.
Let's look at the financial upside. The source material references data from the Arbor Day Foundation, noting that healthy, mature trees can increase a property's overall value by up to 20%.
20% is huge.
Apply that 20% premium to the median home price in a market like Southern California, and the financial impact is staggering.
It's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
A mature, well-maintained canopy is incredibly desirable to buyers. It provides natural privacy from neighbors, significantly lowers summer cooling costs by shading the house.
And it imparts an established, grounded aesthetic that simply cannot be manufactured quickly. You cannot instantly buy a 50-year-old oak tree.
Right, it takes 50 years of time.
But the crucial caveat is that the canopy must be healthy and meticulously maintained. The financial downside is equally aggressive.
Let's talk about that. Think about the psychology of a prospective homebuyer. They pull up to the curb of a property. If the yard looks like a neglected jungle, If there are massive rotting stumps in the lawn, heavy limbs ominously hanging over the driveway, and ivy suffocating the trunks, it immediately triggers a psychological alarm.
In real estate, that visual is the ultimate signal of deferred maintenance.
Deferred maintenance.
The buyer looks at a visibly diseased tree threatening the roof and immediately projects that negligence onto the rest of the house.
If they couldn't be bothered to trim the branch scraping against the gutters, I bet they haven't serviced the HVAC unit in a decade.
Exactly. I bet the water heater is rusting out. I bet the foundation is cracked.
It casts the shadow of profound doubt over the entire transaction.
It scares buyers away entirely or invites massive insulting lowball offers because the buyer assumes they will have to spend thousands fixing hidden problems.
So what does this all mean? How does a professional turn that liability into a 20% premium?
The experts emphasize a philosophical difference between amateurs and professionals, the concept of curation versus clear-cutting.
Curation, like an art gallery.
Kind of. A guy with a truck and a chainsaw views every tree as a nail, and his saw is the hammer. His goal is to cut everything down to the dirt, run the wood chipper, and get paid.
Just clear it all out.
Right. But a certified arborist views the property as a complex, interconnected ecosystem. Their goal is landscape curation.
What does curation actually look like in practice?
It means making strategic, selective removals to benefit the whole. Often, a yard becomes overcrowded. Trees are planted too closely together and engage in competitive exclusion.
Competitive exclusion.
They are fighting each other for limited sunlight, water, and soil nutrients. By strategically removing a stunted, sickly tree, the arborist eliminates that competition.
The remaining healthier trees suddenly have the resources to thrive and expand their canopies.
It's addition by subtraction. You open up the canopy, which allows natural sunlight to hit the understory plants or the lawn.
And it vastly improves air circulation through the yard, which dries out the moisture that feeds those structural fungal infections we discussed earlier.
Yes. It also reduces the sail area of the remaining trees, allowing those brutal Santa Ana winds to pass through the canopy rather than pushing against a solid wall of foliage.
Which dramatically reduces the risk of blowovers.
And aesthetically, it reveals the architectural sightlines of the house that were previously hidden behind a wall of overgrown brush.
I love the realization that sometimes the absolute best tree removal service is the one that convinces you not to remove the tree.
It happens all the time with good arborists.
A true professional arrives to perform a scientific assessment, not just an execution. They might look at an old oak that you thought was a lost cause and identify that the core wood is still incredibly sound.
Right. Instead of clear-cutting it, they might prescribe a heavy strategic end-weight reduction trim to alleviate the leverage on the branches.
And install a dynamic, high-strength cabling system in the upper canopy to provide artificial support to the weaker limbs.
They utilize physics and botany to save a piece of the landscape that took 80 years to grow, preserving that massive financial and aesthetic value for the homeowner.
But when a tree truly is dead, and removal is the only safe option, the curation process doesn't end when the trunk hits the turf.
No, it does not.
The sources emphasize that premier arboriculture requires two final, crucial steps to restore the property: the eradication of invasive ivy and deep stump grinding.
Let's talk about the ivy.
Yeah, because people love the look of English ivy. Climbing up an old brick wall or a massive tree trunk, it looks romantic.
It looks romantic, but botanically, it is a monster.
A monster.
Invasive ivy is incredibly destructive to the structural integrity of a tree. It utilizes adventitious roots.
What are those?
Tiny, aggressive rootlets that dig directly into the bark to climb. These rootlets hold thick, dense layers of leaves tight against the trunk, trapping moisture and entirely blocking airflow.
Creating a microclimate.
It creates a dark, perpetually damp microclimate right against the bark, which is the exact environment required for aggressive fungal decay to take hold.
It's essentially waterboarding the tree.
Furthermore, the ivy's main root system aggressively competes with the tree's roots for water and nutrients. It can literally strangle a mature tree over a period of years.
So professional removal isn't complete until those invasive vines are entirely eradicated.
Preserving the health of the remaining landscape, yes.
And what about the stump? Once the tree is cut down to ground level, a lot of homeowners are tempted to just leave the stump. Maybe put a potted plant on it and call it rustic garden seating.
Very common.
Why is stump grinding so heavily emphasized in the notes?
Because a decaying stump is a massive biological beacon for subterranean termites.
Termites, of course.
As the wood fibers in the stump begin to rot in the soil, they release chemical gradients. Termite colonies, specifically species like the western subterranean termite prevalent in Southern California, detect these decaying wood compounds.
And they come running.
They build foraging tubes through the soil to reach the stump.
So you are basically ringing the dinner bell for a termite colony.
You are providing them with a massive, concentrated food source to establish a massive colony right in your front yard.
And once they finish the stump,
Once they finish consuming the stump, they don't simply move away, they expand their foraging radius. The next closest source of deadwood is very likely the wooden framing of your house.
that is a nightmare scenario. Beyond the insect threat, stumps are just massive liabilities anyway, right?
Oh, completely. They are tripping hazards hidden in the grass. They prevent you from ever reclaiming that square footage for new landscaping, a driveway extension, or a patio.
And if you try the DIY method of chaining it to the bumper of your pickup truck and hitting the gas,
You are highly likely to rip up your underground irrigation lines or tear the bumper off your truck.
professional deep stump grinding utilizes high-powered, specialized carbide teeth to literally chew the stump, and the major root flares down below the grade of the soil.
It eliminates the termite food source, removes the trip hazard, and turns what was a dangerous liability back into highly functional, valuable outdoor living space.
It perfectly completes the transformation of the property. You start with assessing the invisible, compounding risks of the local climate.
Right.
You navigate the legal compliance and the terrifying physics of safe extraction, and you finish with the aesthetic and structural restoration of the art.
That comprehensive scientific approach is how proper arboriculture generates a massive return on investment.
It requires looking at the trees outside your window, not just as scenery, but as complex, dynamic systems that require skilled management.
Absolutely.
It has been a wildly eye-opening journey today. I mean, we've dissected the invisible stress that summer droughts, torrential rains, and those fierce Santa Ana winds put on the structural fibers of our trees.
We covered a lot of ground.
We've learned the critical warning signs, the weeping bark cracks, the fruiting fungi, and the sudden leans that signal a massive failure is imminent.
And we dismantled the DIY delusion.
Exploring the sheer, unpredictable violence of stored kinetic energy in wood, and the invisible, lethal threat of high-voltage electrical arcsing that makes tree care one of the nation's most hazardous professions.
We navigated the hidden bureaucratic maze, too, understanding why cities aggressively protect their shared urban canopy and how massive municipal fines catch so many weekend warriors off guard.
And finally, we saw how scientific professional curation can protect our homes from fires and dramatically boost property values. It completely reframes the way you experience the landscape.
It absolutely does. When you understand the forces at play, you realize how delicate the balance is between human habitation and the natural world.
And that brings up a fascinating thought I want to leave everyone with, something to mull over long after this audio stops.
What's that?
Given everything we have discussed today, how much a single mature tree impacts our physical safety, the thermal dynamics of our neighborhoods, the municipal stormwater infrastructure, and our home's financial value, do we ever truly own the trees on our property?
It's a profound question. The law says we hold the deed to the dirt, but the ecological reality suggests we are merely their temporary caretakers.
We are tasked with the incredibly heavy, sometimes dangerous responsibility of balancing our modern lives with these ancient, massive, living forces of nature.
We are just stewards of the canopy for a little while.
It is a shared world out there, and the forces of gravity and weather are always in charge.
Well said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Tomorrow morning, when you step outside with your coffee, take a good long look at the canopy towering above your own home.
Look for the cracks. Look for the fungi.
Listen for how the wood reacts to the wind. And until next time, keep exploring.